With cultural sensitivity at an all-time high when it comes to air travel, American Airlines is the latest carrier to come under fire when just this weekend, an Ivy League professor of economy was escorted from the plane after his seat neighbor mistakenly deciphered math equations that he was working on for Arabic script, and then proceeded to allege terrorism. This man is identified as an Italian man, Dr. Guido Menzio. He's an associate professor of economics at the University of Pennsylvania, and he was aboard the aircraft working on a differential equation on the flight. The neighbor, passenger next to him, was trying to connect with him and stir up conversation. He wasn't into it. He's doing his work. Why does he want to have to talk to her, So this bothered this particular passenger. She then sent a little note to a flight attendant saying that she was feeling a little bit sick and that there was, as a result of this questionable behavior that was going on by her neighboring passenger. So the plane was still on the tarmac. The pilot, took the plane back to the gate. The woman was taken off the plane, and then Dr. Menzio was taken off the plane. They took him through a series of questioning. He says that they were very, very respectful of him. But the whole thing with him was that he was headed to Syracuse to catch a connecting flight to Ontario to deliver a presentation at Queen's University. So he was focused on his presentation and focused on his business. And sometimes that happens, when you fly. But needless to say, Dr. Menzio said that he was treated respectfully, but he did express, concerns over this issue, saying that, airlines really need to look at their policies with regard to collecting intelligence data in these types of situations.
Yeah, so, she's just given me a great idea for if I'm ever sitting next to somebody on a plane and they're just jabbering away, and I'm like, I'm really tired, or I just don't want to talk to you, and I've got 12 hours of this. Just slip the flight attendant a note and saying, I think this person is acting suspiciously. Please don't say anything, but I think they're acting suspiciously. I need to be moved. There you go, bingo. That's all it takes. The sad truth is that this guy, math is the loser. The great math is a loser. And that just another lesson to learn. Don't do your work on the plane. I feel this is one of those ridiculous situations where clearly the sensitivity, as you said in the opening there, the sensitivity has got to such a degree that you can't even be scribbling quietly and privately without somebody raising a flag and somebody being concerned. And it's totally counterintuitive, and ultimately, and I don't know really what the driver of this is, and I don't think there's any one particular thing. It's part of the rhetoric that's entered the public conversation that we're having. It's what's happening in Europe with the refugee crisis. It's a whole host of different things, but it's clearly an unhealthy state of affairs.
And we saw this too back in April. There was an incident on Southwest Airlines with a UC Berkeley student who was on a phone call with a family member, and a neighboring passenger felt like he was saying something that was dangerous or was not appropriate or terrorist-like language. So she told the flight attendant, and it turns out he didn't even say what he was, kind of supposed to have said. So where's the line here with regard to these passengers? Where's the line with flight attendants? Do we need cultural sensitivity training for flight attendants? But what kind of stops them from profiling? Like, where is the healthy line here?
Right. That being said, there are, airlines are notorious for having fairly arbitrary decisions as to why someone can't get on a plane or why someone should be removed from a plane. And it's not just because you're drunk and you're disorderly. There's always instances of a kid kicking off, a 2-year-old kicking off, or having a peanut allergy, and the parents getting very excited about that, and then the flight attendant asking them to be, removed from the flight, and everybody getting up in arms because the airline's not sensitive to toddlers on the plane. Or there's a sensitivity to a woman, and she's wearing a low-cut T-shirt, and the guy sitting next to her is like, oh, this is offending me, and I'm just trying to get to sleep, and I've got to look at this woman, or and she's got a low-cut T-shirt. You need to be removed, or change your T-shirt. So there's always those types of instances, and airline travel seems to, or the flight, the crew always seem to have the last word on it. But that being said, so often there's no rhyme or reason to the decisions that they make, and frequently they get into trouble with that. That being said, there seems to be an abundance of occurrences whereby, for cultural reasons, seemingly and we're coming from a fear-based culture of,
that's right,
or that fierce sense of Islamic-based fear and terrorism, that anything that deviates it sets people off on edge, and depending on who you get and the flight attendant. I mean, that being said, depending on who you get a flight attendant, you could be escorted from the plane. That being said, there are plenty of other instances where you get I've sat next to a bunch of very strange individuals on planes and no one says anything.
Right.
So,
I mean,
it depends who you get, is my point, I
Do you think that some of this on a societal level has been elevated because of Donald Trump operationalizing, racist type talk?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, it doesn't help. I mean, and it sort of brings it into the topic of conversation as a legitimate arguing point, and rather than as seeing it as a bigoted race baiting or fear mongering point, and it's seen as something that has a legitimacy in the public domain and has a legitimacy as in terms of a thought process. So undoubtedly that hasn't helped. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't single that out as the key, but it is one key element. It is an element that has been influential for sure. As I said, there's a whole host of other instances and other attacks in Europe, the refugee crisis, the ongoing issues in Syria. I mean, there's a whole host. There's no one particular thing, but certainly that has inflamed it, for sure.
All right, we'll have to see. I mean, what are these airlines going to do? Cultural sensitivity training for flight attendants. We got to figure out something here.